The judge looked at that envelope I handed him, read what was inside, and started laughing so hard I thought he might fall out of his chair. My husband Damon's face went from confident to confused to absolutely terrified in about 3 seconds flat. His lawyer started shuffling through papers like he was looking for something he'd lost. And me? I just sat there with the biggest smile on my face, watching 5 years of lies crumble right there in that Nashville courtroom. "Your Honor," Damon's lawyer stammered, "we weren't aware of any—" "Well, you should have been," Judge Williams said, still chuckling as he waved that envelope in the air. "This here prenuptial agreement is tighter than bark on a tree. Your client isn't getting a penny of Mrs. Jefferson's inheritance or business assets. Not 1 red cent." Damon looked like somebody had slapped him with a wet fish. All that swagger he walked in with? Gone. Just like that. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Now let me tell you how I got to that beautiful moment, because honey, it's been a long road. My name is Keisha Jefferson, and I'm 58 years old. I've been running my own marketing business here in Nashville for 23 years, built it from nothing but a dream and a prayer. My late grandmother Cora always told me, "Baby girl, never let nobody take what you worked for. Not your husband, not your children, not nobody." I should have listened to those words a lot closer when I met Damon 5 years ago. I was in a real low place back then. My first husband Marcus had passed away from cancer 2 years before, and I was lonely, real lonely, the kind of lonely that makes you make bad decisions. I met Damon at my church's singles ministry. He was 45 then, smooth as silk, with pretty brown eyes and a smile that could melt butter. He said all the right things, brought me flowers every Sunday, helped me around the house, treated me like a queen. "You deserve the world, beautiful," he'd tell me, holding my hands after Sunday service. "A successful woman like you shouldn't be alone." My friends at Mount Olive Baptist tried to warn me. My girl Denise pulled me aside one Sunday and said, "Keisha, that man asking an awful lot of questions about your business. You need to be careful." But I was in love, or at least I thought I was. Damon made me feel young again, made me forget about the long nights working late, the stress of running a company, the empty house that still smelled like Marcus's cologne. 6 months after we started dating, my grandmother Cora passed away at 92. That woman had been saving money her whole life, living simple, investing smart. She left me everything, $2.8 million. $2.8 million. I couldn't believe it when the lawyer read that will. That's when things with Damon moved real fast. Within 2 weeks of getting that inheritance, he was talking marriage. "Life's too short to wait," he said. "We're not getting any younger, baby. Let's make this official." Something in my spirit felt uneasy, but I ignored it. When you're grieving and in love, you don't always think straight. My business lawyer, Mr. Terrence Brooks, bless that man, insisted I needed a prenuptial agreement. "Keisha, you've got assets to protect now. This is just smart business," Terrence told me in his office downtown. "Any man who truly loves you will understand." When I brought it up to Damon, he acted like I'd insulted his whole family. "A prenup? Keisha, baby, that hurts. Don't you trust me? Don't you know I love you for you, not your money?" He put on such a show, tears in his eyes, voice all shaky. "If that's what you need to feel secure, I'll sign whatever you want. I don't even need to read it. I trust you completely." That should have been my first red flag right there. What man signs a legal document without reading it? But I was so touched by what I thought was his pure love and trust. Fool me. We got married at Mount Olive 3 months later. Beautiful ceremony, all my friends and family there, Damon looking handsome in his black tuxedo. Pastor Williams married us right there at the altar where I'd been going to church for 15 years. Even sang "This Day" by Donnie McClurkin. I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The troubles started real subtle like. About 6 months after the wedding, right after I'd moved most of my inheritance into safe investments, Damon quit his job at the insurance company. "Baby, I want to support your business better," he explained. "Maybe I can help you expand, be your business partner. We're a team now." That sounded reasonable at first, but Damon didn't know nothing about marketing. Instead of helping, he started spending. New clothes, expensive dinners, a membership at the fancy country club on the other side of town. "We can afford it now, honey," he'd say when I questioned the bills. "What's the point of having money if we don't enjoy life?" My grandmother Cora used to say, "When somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Damon was showing me exactly who he was, but I was still wearing those love blinders. Things got worse over the next few years. Damon started making investments without telling me. Lost $15,000 on some get-rich-quick scheme with cryptocurrency. Bought a boat we didn't need for $25,000. Started going to that country club every single day, running up tabs he couldn't pay. Meanwhile, I'm working harder than ever, trying to keep my business growing while this man is bleeding money like it's going out of style. My stress levels went through the roof. I started having chest pains. Wasn't sleeping well. Denise kept telling me to put my foot down, but every time I tried to talk to Damon about money, he'd turn on that charm. "Keisha, baby, you're worrying too much. We're blessed. God wants us to live abundantly. Besides, I'm working on something big that's going to pay off soon." That something big never came. What came instead was bill after bill after bill. Credit cards maxed out in his name. Car payments for a BMW he bought without asking me. By year 4 of our marriage, Damon had racked up $87,000 in debt. $87,000! The final straw came last year when I found out he'd been lying to people at the country club, telling them my business was our business, bragging about our inheritance from our grandmother. Acting like he'd built everything I'd worked 23 years for. I confronted him one evening after he came home late from another business meeting that smelled suspiciously like bourbon and cigars. "Damon, we need to talk about your spending. This can't continue." He looked at me with this cold expression I'd never seen before. The mask was finally slipping off. "My spending? Keisha, everything we have is ours. We're married. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. That's how marriage works. That inheritance was from my grandmother. My business is something I built before I ever met you. And now we're husband and wife, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, remember? That money belongs to both of us now." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact and entitled, made my blood run cold. This wasn't the man I married, or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. That night, I called Terrence Brooks. "I need to see that prenup again. Read every single word." What I found out changed everything. That document Damon signed without reading, it protected every penny of my premarital assets, any inheritance received during the marriage, and kept all debts separate. It also said if we divorced, nobody got spousal support. "Terrence," I whispered into the phone, "he doesn't know what he signed, does he?" "Keisha, that man signed away any claim to your wealth the day before your wedding. I wrote that agreement to protect you from exactly this situation." I filed for divorce the next week. Damon's reaction was exactly what I expected. Pure rage mixed with disbelief. "You can't do this to me, Keisha. I gave up my career for you. I supported your dreams. We're partners." "The only thing you supported was your own lifestyle with my money." That's when he got his lawyer and decided to fight for half of everything. 50% of my business, 50% of my inheritance, spousal support, the whole 9 yards. His lawyer was confident too, talking about marital assets and equal distribution. They had no idea what was coming. The morning of our court hearing, Damon walked into that courtroom like he was about to win the lottery. Designer suit I'd probably paid for, expensive haircut, smiling like he'd already won. His lawyer had briefcases full of papers, ready to argue why my husband deserved millions of dollars for 5 years of marriage. When it was my turn to present, I stood up, walked to the judge's bench, and handed over that envelope. Your Honor, I'd like to submit the prenuptial agreement my husband signed before our marriage. The color drained from Damon's face so fast, I thought he might faint right there in the courtroom. What prenuptial agreement? Damon's lawyer practically shouted, jumping up from his chair like his pants were on fire. Your Honor, we were never made aware of any prenuptial agreement in discovery. Judge Williams put on his reading glasses and started going through that envelope page by page. The courtroom got so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Damon was whispering frantically to his lawyer, his hands shaking, sweat beading up on his forehead. Mr. Carter, the judge said to Damon's lawyer, this document is notarized, properly witnessed, and signed by your client 5 years ago. It's completely valid and enforceable. But, Your Honor, the lawyer stammered, my client he didn't understand what he was signing. He was pressured into, Excuse me? I stood up, my voice carrying across that courtroom like thunder. Pressured? I asked that man 3 times if he wanted to read it first. 3 times. He said, and I quote, Baby, I don't need to read it. I trust you completely. Judge Williams looked at Damon over his glasses. Mr. Jefferson, is that true? Did you refuse to read this document before signing it? Damon looked like a deer in headlights. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to speak, but nothing came out. Finally, he whispered, I thought it was just a formality. Something lawyers make you do. A formality? The judge's eyebrows went up so high they almost reached his hairline. Son, this is a legal contract that clearly states you have no claim to any premarital assets, any inheritance received during the marriage, and that you waive all rights to spousal support. Did you think marriage was a joke too? That's when Damon completely lost it. He jumped up and pointed at me like I was some kind of criminal. She tricked me. She made me think we were true partners. I gave up everything for her. What exactly did you give up? I asked, standing up to face him. Your job at the insurance company that paid $38,000 a year? The job you quit so you could spend my inheritance on boats and country clubs and Lord knows what else? I supported you. I was there for you. You were there for my bank account. My voice cracked with emotion. You spent $87,000 in 5 years, Damon. $87,000. What kind of support is that? The judge banged his gavel. That's enough. I've reviewed this prenuptial agreement thoroughly. It's ironclad. Mr. Damon Jefferson, you are not entitled to any portion of your wife's premarital business assets, any inheritance she received during the marriage, or any spousal support. Furthermore, according to this agreement, all debts incurred individually during the marriage remain the sole responsibility of the person who incurred them. Damon's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Your Honor, perhaps we could discuss a settlement that— There's nothing to settle, Judge Williams said firmly. The law is the law. The prenuptial agreement is valid and will be enforced. Mrs. Jefferson keeps all her assets, and Mr. Jefferson is responsible for his own debts. Case closed. When that gavel came down, I felt like a weight the size of Tennessee had been lifted off my shoulders. 5 years of stress, 5 years of being used, 5 years of doubting myself. It was over. Damon sat there in stunned silence as his lawyer packed up his papers. When we walked out of that courtroom, he followed me into the hallway. Keisha, please, we can work this out. I love you. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I turned around and looked at this man I'd shared a bed with for 5 years, and I didn't recognize him anymore. Maybe I never really knew him at all. Damon, you don't love me. You never did. You loved what you thought I could give you. Well, now you know exactly what that is. Nothing. You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage. I'm not throwing anything away. You did that the moment you decided to treat me like your personal ATM instead of your wife. That was the last conversation we ever had. 3 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. I got to keep everything I'd worked for, everything my grandmother left me, and my freedom. Damon got his debt and a hard lesson about reading legal documents. But honey, that was just the beginning of his troubles. Within a month of our divorce being final, Damon's whole world started falling apart like a house of cards in a windstorm. See, all those credit cards he'd maxed out? All those loans he'd taken? They didn't disappear just because we got divorced. According to that beautiful prenup, every penny of that $87,000 was his responsibility alone. My friend Denise called me one Tuesday morning, laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Girl, you will never guess what I just saw," she said between giggles. "I was driving past the country club and there's a tow truck hooking up that fancy BMW Damon was so proud of. Apparently he'd missed 3 car payments. That $25,000 loan for the boat? The bank came for that too. Within 6 weeks of our divorce, Damon went from living like a king to sleeping on his 73-year-old mama's couch. His mama, Mrs. Dorothy Jefferson, called me up one evening. Now, I'd always gotten along with Dorothy. She was a sweet lady who'd raised 5 children by herself after her husband died young. She knew her son wasn't perfect. "Keisha, baby," she said, her voice tired and sad. "I'm so sorry about how things turned out. I tried to raise that boy right. But somewhere along the way, he got the idea that the world owed him something. Mrs. Dorothy, you don't need to apologize for him. He's a grown man." "I know, baby. I just want you to know that I always liked you. You were good for him, or you could have been if he'd appreciated what he had." That conversation broke my heart a little bit. Dorothy was a good woman who'd worked 2 jobs her whole life to raise her kids. Now she had to deal with her 45-year-old son moving back home because he'd gambled away his future on my inheritance. The country club membership that Damon was so proud of? Gone. They revoked it when he couldn't pay his dues. The expensive clothes, the fancy dinners, the whole lifestyle he'd built on my money, all of it disappeared. But the thing that really got to him was how fast word spread through Nashville's Black professional community. See, Nashville ain't that big, and the Black professional network is even smaller. When people found out what Damon had tried to do, marry a successful woman, quit his job, spend her inheritance, then try to take half of everything in divorce, his reputation was finished. I heard through the grapevine that he tried to get his old job back at the insurance company. They told him the position had been filled. He applied at 3 other companies. Word had gotten around. Nobody wanted to hire a man who'd tried to gold dig his way through marriage. My hairdresser, Tonette, told me she'd seen him at the grocery store, looking defeated and using coupons. "Keisha, that man looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 months. Karma is real, honey." And it wasn't just the financial consequences. Damon tried to get back into the dating scene, but Nashville's single Black women over 40 are a tight-knit group. They talk. They share information. They protect each other. My church sister Valencia told me she'd seen his profile on a dating app. Girl, I screenshotted it and sent it to every single woman I know with a warning. We're not about to let another sister get caught up in his foolishness. 6 months after our divorce, I ran into Damon at the Kroger on Charlotte Avenue. He was by himself, looking thinner than I remembered, pushing a cart with generic brands and marked-down meat. He saw me and actually had the nerve to approach me. "Keisha," he said quietly, "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. Is there any way we could we maybe talk? Work things out?" I looked at this man who'd tried to steal my life's work, who'd disrespected my grandmother's memory by treating her inheritance like his personal playground, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just nothing. "Damon, we don't have anything to talk about. You made your choices, and now you're living with them. But I love you. I realize that now. I know I took you for granted, but I can change. No, you don't love me. You love what you thought you could take from me. And now that there's nothing left to take, you want to try again? That's not love, Damon. That's desperation." He stood there looking pitiful as I walked away. I actually felt sorry for him for about 30 seconds. Then I remembered all the stress he'd put me through, all the nights I couldn't sleep worrying about money, all the times I'd questioned my own judgment because of his manipulation. My pity dried up real quick. The final nail in Damon's coffin came about 8 months after our divorce. He filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 7. Complete liquidation of assets. Not that he had any assets left to liquidate, but it made everything official. The man who'd tried to claim half of my $2.8 million inheritance ended up with less than nothing. I found out about the bankruptcy from Terrence Brooks, my lawyer. He called me up laughing. "Keisha, you'll never guess what just crossed my desk. Your ex-husband's bankruptcy filing. That prenup didn't just protect your assets, it saved you from being liable for his debts if he'd succeeded in his scheme." That's when it really hit me how close I'd come to financial disaster. If Damon had somehow managed to overturn that prenup, if he'd convinced a judge to give him half of everything, I would have ended up responsible for half of his debt too. I could have lost my business, my inheritance, everything my grandmother worked her whole life to leave me. But I didn't. I was free, financially secure, and ready to make sure no other woman went through what I'd been through. That's when I got the idea that would change everything. Not just for me, but for women all over Nashville who needed protection from men like Damon. An idea that would turn my painful experience into something that could help other people. 6 months later, I was sitting in my newly renovated office downtown, looking at the sign on my door that read, "The Cora Jefferson Foundation for Women's Financial Protection." Named after my grandmother, of course, the woman who taught me to protect what I worked for. My idea had started simple: help other women get prenuptial agreements and good divorce representation. But it had grown into something bigger than I ever imagined. We were helping women all over Tennessee, and word was spreading to other states too. My first client was a young sister named Zara, who worked as a nurse at Vanderbilt Hospital. She'd been dating a man for 2 years who suddenly got real interested in marriage after she inherited her deceased father's house and a small insurance payout. "Ms. Jefferson," she said, sitting across from my desk with tears in her eyes. "I keep thinking about your story that Valencia told me at church. My boyfriend gets upset every time I mention a prenup. Says it means I don't trust him." "Baby," I told her, reaching across to squeeze her hand, "any man who gets angry about protecting what you worked for isn't the right man for you. Trust me on that." We got Zara a rock-solid prenuptial agreement. Her boyfriend threw a fit, called her all kinds of names, said she was being selfish and materialistic. You know what Zara did? She thanked him for showing his true colors and found herself a man who respected her enough to sign those papers without complaint. They got married last spring, and she sends me pictures of how happy they are. That's the thing about men like Damon. They can't hide their true nature when money is involved. A good man will want to protect you just as much as you want to protect yourself. By the end of my first year running the foundation, we'd helped 47 women. 47! Some needed prenups, some needed divorce lawyers they could afford, some just needed someone to tell them they weren't crazy for wanting to protect their assets. My favorite success story was a 72-year-old widow named Beatrice, whose own son was trying to pressure her into signing over her house so he could manage her finances better. Sound familiar? We helped her understand her rights and connected her with an elder law attorney. That greedy son is still mad, but Beatrice is still in her own home, happy and independent. But the real satisfaction came from watching what happened to men like Damon when women stopped being easy targets. Speaking of Damon, his downward spiral continued in ways that were almost comical. About a year after our divorce, I heard he'd started working at a car dealership. Not selling cars, mind you, but washing them in the service department. From insurance adjuster to car washer. That's what happens when you burn every bridge and ruin your own reputation. His dating life was even worse. The Nashville black professional women had basically blacklisted him. Word had spread so far that women in Atlanta and Memphis knew his name. Someone had created a social media group called Sister, Check Your Man, where women shared information about men who'd tried to financially exploit them. Damon's picture was practically the group's mascot. My friend Denise showed me a screenshot from the group one day. A woman in Memphis had posted, "Ladies, be careful of Damon Jefferson from Nashville. He's on the dating apps again, probably looking for his next victim. This man tried to steal millions from his ex-wife." The post had 300 comments, all from women sharing their own stories of financial manipulation and warning each other. It was like watching women build their own protection network, and it was beautiful. Meanwhile, my business was thriving. The marketing company was having its best years ever. Turns out, when you're not stressed about a lying, cheating, stealing husband, you can focus on work properly. Who knew? I'd also started speaking at churches and women's groups about financial protection in relationships. The first time I told my story publicly was at Mount Olive Baptist during Women's Day last year. Pastor Williams introduced me, and I walked up to that podium nervous as all get out. "Sisters," I started, my voice shaking a little, "I want to tell you about the most expensive lesson I ever learned, and how it saved my life." By the time I finished talking, there wasn't a dry eye in that sanctuary. Women were nodding, saying, "Amen," and some were crying because they recognized their own situations in my story. After service, I had 12 women ask me for help with their own relationship issues. That's when I knew this foundation wasn't just about me healing from my experience. It was about preventing other women from going through the same thing. The turning point came 18 months after my divorce. I was at the foundation office late one evening, working on a case for a young woman whose fiancé was pressuring her to combine their bank accounts before marriage, when my secretary buzzed me. "Ms. Jefferson, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." I looked up to see Damon standing in my doorway. But this wasn't the confident, charming man I'd married. This was someone who looked broken down, worn out, and desperate. His clothes were cheap and ill-fitting, his shoes were scuffed, and he had the look of a man who hadn't been sleeping well. "Keisha, please. I need to talk to you." I almost told him to leave, but something in his voice made me pause. "You've got 5 minutes." He sat down in the chair across from my desk, the same chair where I'd counseled dozens of women about protecting themselves from men exactly like him. "I know you hate me," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I ruined everything. But I'm in trouble, Keisha. Real trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "I can't find work anywhere. Every time someone Googles my name, that story about our divorce comes up. I can't get a decent job, I can't get a date, I can't even get an apartment in a good neighborhood because landlords think I'm some kind of scammer." I sat back in my chair and looked at him. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for him. But the bigger part of me remembered all the sleepless nights, all the stress, all the manipulation he'd put me through. "Damon, what exactly do you want from me?" "I want you to help me clear my name, tell people that maybe I wasn't that bad, that maybe the story got blown out of proportion." The audacity of this man, even broke and desperate. He was still trying to manipulate me. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice getting stronger. "You want me to lie about what you did to me so you can have an easier time finding your next victim?" "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." I stood up, my chair rolling back. "You married me for my inheritance. You quit your job to spend my money. You racked up almost $100,000 in debt thinking you'd make me pay for it. And when I divorced you, you tried to take half of everything I'd worked 23 years to build. Now you want me to help you do the same thing to someone else?" He looked down at his hands. I don't know what else to do." "Here's what you do, Damon. You get a job, any job that will hire you. You pay off your debts. You go to therapy and figure out why you think you're entitled to other people's hard work. And you leave me and every other woman in this city alone." "Keisha, please." "I'm not finished. You see this office, this foundation? I built this because of what you did to me. Every woman I help, every prenup we draft, every divorce we support, that's your legacy. You didn't just try to steal from me, you created something that's going to protect women from men like you for years to come." He sat there in silence for a long moment, then slowly stood up. "I guess I deserve that." "You deserve a lot worse than that. But I'm not bitter anymore, Damon. I'm grateful. You taught me exactly what I needed to know about protecting myself and helping other women do the same." After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about how far I'd come. 2 years ago, I was a lonely widow who made the mistake of trusting the wrong man. Now I was running a foundation that had helped over 100 women protect themselves financially. I had my business, my inheritance, my freedom, and most importantly, my peace of mind. My grandmother Cora always said, "Baby girl, sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened." She was right, as usual. A few months ago, I met someone. His name is Robert, and he's a widower who runs his own construction company. When I told him about my foundation and why I started it, you know what he said? "That's amazing, Keisha. Any woman smart enough to protect herself like that is exactly the kind of woman I'd want to build something real with." And when I mentioned that I'd want a prenuptial agreement if we ever got serious, he smiled and said, "Of course. I'd want one too. We've both worked too hard to build what we have to be careless about protecting it." That's the difference between a real man and a user like Damon. A real man wants to protect what you've built together, not take what you built before. Last week, I got a letter from a woman in California who'd heard about our foundation online. She said our story had inspired her to leave a marriage where her husband was financially abusing her. She'd taken her children and moved back home with her parents, but she was free and safe. "Ms. Jefferson," she wrote, "reading about how you stood up for yourself gave me the courage to stand up for myself and my children. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to get your life back." That letter is framed on my office wall, right next to a picture of my grandmother, Cora. Every day when I see it, I'm reminded that sometimes the most painful experiences in life can become the foundation for helping other people. The Cora Jefferson Foundation for Women's Financial Protection is now operating in 4 states, with plans to expand to 10 more by next year. We've helped over 300 women protect their assets, leave abusive marriages, and build better financial futures for themselves and their children. As for Damon, last I heard, he was working at a warehouse outside the city, still living with his mama, still alone. His bankruptcy is on his credit report for the next several years, which means even if he could find another woman to trust him, he wouldn't have any credit to abuse. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just watching someone face the natural consequences of their own choices while you build something beautiful from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. I sleep well at night now. My house is peaceful, my business is profitable, and every day I get to help women protect themselves from men who see them as dollar signs instead of human beings. My grandmother's inheritance isn't just sitting in a bank account, it's working to make the world a little bit safer for women who work hard and deserve to keep what they earn. And the best part? I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. Grateful that I was smart enough to protect myself, grateful for the prenup that saved my financial life, and grateful that my pain turned into purpose. The next time some smooth-talking man tries to convince a woman that love means giving up her financial protection, she'll have places to turn for help. She'll have lawyers who understand what she's facing, support groups full of women who've been there, and hopefully, the wisdom to choose a partner who wants to build something together instead of taking what she's already built. That's real love, mutual respect, shared goals, and the security of knowing that someone wants to protect your dreams, not steal them. Thank you for staying with us through this journey. Please subscribe for more stories and drop a comment. We read every single one.